Welcome back to Ironpaper Investigates, where we run real marketing experiments and share what the data actually says. How do you get leads to actually qualify, not just pile up in your CRM? Today, I'm talking with Adam Sporrer. He just ran a powerful campaign for a client in the energy decarbonization space. They had an SQL goal of 5%, budgets had been cut, a geopolitical conflict paused half their campaigns, and they still came out the other side with an SQL rate of 8.9%. So today, he's going to tell us exactly how they did it. Adam, welcome. Let's dig in.
Yep, great to be here. Thanks, Ian. That 8.9% number only exists because at the outset, were committed to staying in front of people long after the original campaign had finished. So we did that with consistent messaging through email nurture, retargeting campaigns, and it's not just about getting in front of them. The content was valuable to the prospects because it was based on solving their pain points. So when you look at the leads that had only been in the funnel a few months, the MQL to SQL conversion was 3.7%. At 6 months, we started to see it increase to 4.9%. And then finally, after a year, we started to exceed the goal at close to 9%, which you mentioned. I've had experience with some clients who would have kind of ripped up that strategy after the 4-month mark, but I'm glad we didn't because we understood at the beginning that our sales cycles are long and we just needed to keep engaging these folks. So that's what we did.
What you're really talking about is a strong strategy, patience. You and the client both really believed in what you did, so I love that. Your post-campaign presentation walks through a single customer journey. There was a contact at Japan Airlines that took 9 months and crossed multiple product lines before the deal closed. What does that tell you about B2B buyers, how they actually behave versus how I think some companies kind of market to them or like kind of want their prospects to behave?
During that 9 months, we had 6 distinct touch points and at least 3 people in that buying group. None of them really follow that straight line that I think a lot of people think happens. The first contact filled out a landing page in April. They attended a webinar in May. They opened and clicked every nurture through the summer. They downloaded a procurement guide in October. And then in January, they re-engaged through our ongoing nurture series and attended a second webinar. And that's when the deal closed. But what was really interesting was there was 2 additional stakeholders at the time at the same company that were doing the same thing. So they were also attending webinars, opening every email in the series, actively engaging with the content. So they weren't just being like passively CC'd on emails, which I think a lot of people think is what happens. They were independently following their own educational path and building their own conviction and trust with the client on their own timeline. I think that's the gap most B2B companies have. They think that there's one buyer following one path when the reality is there's that committee and they're all consuming content independently. And if you're not nurturing broadly and consistently, you're most likely falling off their radar like anything else. And you can't do that in this business because it comes down to trust and feeling comfortable with your partner.
That's a really good point. One other thing I noticed, Adam, when I looked at that buyer journey is the level of self-guided education, I think is getting deeper and deeper. That's something I've seen change in my career and a lot the last couple of years where folks were reaching out to sales where they kind of wanted some support in the sales process earlier. I think there's more tools at hand, there's more resources available, and folks are self-navigating the buyer journey deeper into the funnel. And then when they do convert, they're a lot better prepared for those sales conversations. And I think it puts a lot of that responsibility on marketers like us to understand that shift and give them the tools. In this case, there was a couple of different webinars. Those are places where they could show up. It's being a little bit self-guided, but they're there, really on their own. And so I think y'all did a really great job of understanding those changing dynamics and putting a smart buyer's journey in front of these folks. So Adam, if a CEO or VP is watching this right now, and they want to make sure that their buyer journeys are actually doing what they should be doing, what's one conversation you think that they should go back and have with their marketing leader this week?
I would ask my marketing leader one simple question. What happens to a lead after they finish the first campaign? Because I think in some organizations, the answer is nothing. We move on to the next campaign, right? So they hit the end of a nurture sequence, maybe, and that's where the pipeline becomes stagnant. I think the difference between that 3.7% and 9% conversion lives in that gap, in that time period. So the months after the first touch point, when most teams assume the lead is dead, are actually when the intent, like you mentioned, is building. They're reading, comparing, looping in colleagues, building a case internally with the buying group. But if you've gone silent, you're not a part of that conversation anymore. So the real question isn't, are we generating enough leads, which I hear all the time? It's, are we still in the room 6 months later when that decision actually gets made? And if your marketing leader can show you the system that keeps these contacts engaged, great. If the answer is, I'm not sure what happens after the first sequence, that's a problem, but it's also an opportunity.
Yeah, wow, really well said. Adam, this was exactly what our audience needs: real numbers, real decisions, real results from a live program. If you want to dig in deeper into the data behind this, we'll link the breakdown in the show notes. I'm Ian. This is Ironpaper Investigates. See you on the next episode.